Accidents from human error or mechanical failure are common in Formula One, but some still shock you, as if time froze for a few seconds. The drivers raced at over 300 kilometers per hour with cars so close they're nearly touching. Everything happens in the blink of an eye, a tiny mistake, a maneuver that goes wrong, and suddenly everything explodes. The cars disintegrate, parts go flying, and the only thing you think is, this can't end well. And while the cameras show you the chaos, people's reaction is the same everywhere. Faces of disbelief, hands on their heads, mouths open. Everyone is in shock, unable to believe what they just saw. Those are the moments we're going to relive today in this video. Jarno Trulli had a terrible accident that abruptly ended his weekend. On lap 39 of the Grand Prix, Trulli's Renault suffered a suspension failure as he took the bridge corner at over 200 kilometers per hour. The car spun out of control violently, and this happened. The impact with the barriers was brutal. The car was destroyed, rolling over several times before stopping in the gravel trap. Surprisingly, Trulli got out of the car by himself. Then he was taken to the medical center. And despite the magnitude of the crash, he was unharmed with only a bit of dizziness. However, this was not the last accident that happened at Silverstone, nor was it the most terrifying one. Alexander Verst was involved in a brutal accident at the start of the 1998 Canadian Grand Prix. When the lights went out, the Austrian driver attempted an ambitious move on Jean Alesi's Sauber in the first corner, and this happened.
And he's going for the lead. Oh no, now they're definitely going to stop the race.
The car flipped over through the gravel trap, taking out Jarno Trulli and Johnny Herbert. During the rollovers, Verst's head was dangerously exposed and the race was stopped with a red flag. Incredibly, the Austrian returned to the pits, got into the spare car, and starting from the back of the grid at the restart, finished in 4th position. Nico Hülkenberg experienced one of the most dramatic moments of his career at the 2018 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. On the first lap, while fighting to gain positions, he tried to overtake Romain Grosjean's Haas on the outside, and the following happened.
Now there's a rollover. Rollover accident! Attention! Serious accident for Hülkenberg!
Hülkenberg made contact with Grosjean's front wheel, which caused his Renault to fly sideways, roll over twice, and end up crashing hard into the wall. The car ended up upside down, and fortunately the halo protected the German driver, who managed to come out uninjured after being taken out of the car. In Q3, Daniil Kvyat had a terrifying crash at turn 10 in Suzuka. When he put a rear wheel on the grass, his car lost control and veered into the barriers.
Big one for Kvyat. Big one for Kvyat. There's gonna be a flag, probably a red flag.
The Red Bull rolled over in the gravel, tearing off the wheels on the left side before coming to a stop. Incredibly, Kvyat came out unscathed. And after being evaluated at the medical center, he was optimistic. However, his weekend was ruined, and he had to start the race from the pit lane. Christian Fittipaldi starred in one of the most dramatic finishes in Formula One history. On the last lap at Monza, Fittipaldi's Minardi touched the rear wheel of his teammate's car, and the following happened.
He reached Pierluigi Martini and did a full flip.
The car went flying and did a 360-degree spin at over 300 kilometers per hour. Incredibly, Fittipaldi landed on 2 wheels and managed to cross the finish line in 8th place. In the end, both drivers came out unscathed in one of the most spectacular finishes in Formula One history. Damon Hill suffered a chilling accident during free practice. The British driver was hit by Eddie Irvine's Jordan, which spun as it approached the hairpin and lifted Hill's Williams, flipping it violently over the gravel trap. After contact, the car landed upside down, narrowly avoiding tragedy as his helmet nearly hit the ground. Fortunately, both drivers were unharmed, and Hill continued his weekend, in which he later won the race. Patrick Tambay suffered a serious accident at Mirabeau Corner on lap 68. While battling with Martin Brundle, the Briton moved to the right, cutting across Tambay and then... The Frenchman's car rose almost 2 meters into the air, flipped over, and crashed brutally into the safety barrier, landing very close to the spectators. Fortunately, the car landed on its wheels and the driver was unharmed. Even so, the race was suspended with a red flag and both cars were out of the competition. Mark Webber was involved in one of the most chaotic accidents in the history of Interlagos. On lap 54 with the track wet, Webber lost control of his car and the following happened.
The 122.7 appears on screen, and it's a major crash for Mark Webber. He looks okay, but half the car is destroyed.
Debris flew all over the track. Fernando Alonso, who was approaching at almost 300 kilometers per hour, didn't have time to react.
Many cars going off. Oh, we have another car. We thought Alonso dodged and probably...
He crashed into one of the loose wheels, lost control, and slammed hard into the tire barrier. So the race was stopped with a red flag. The impact was brutal. Alonso had to be taken out on a stretcher and taken to the hospital. Although fortunately, he was not seriously injured. When the race was stopped, the result was taken 2 laps before the accident, which allowed Alonso to get on the podium, even though he didn't finish. And to make the situation even more unusual, he shared the podium with Kimi Räikkönen and Giancarlo Fisichella, whose car caught fire in Parc Fermé. And although Webber and Alonso suffered pretty hard hits, these weren't the most violent ones they experienced. The 1989 edition had one of the most chaotic starts ever seen at the Paul Ricard circuit. At the start of the Grand Prix, Mauricio Gugelmin found himself in the middle of a scramble at the first corner and went for an impossible gap between Gerhard Berger's Ferrari and Thierry Boutsen's Williams.
Mauricio Gugelmin locked up the brakes and slid upside down off the track.
After colliding with Boutsen and the rear of Nigel Mansell's Ferrari, Gugelmin was launched into the air and slid headfirst along the track, stopping upside down in the runoff area. Due to the chaos on the opening lap, the race was stopped with a red flag. Gugelmin, Mansell, and Martin Dundley used their spare cars and didn't miss the second start. And so you don't miss my videos, subscribe! The race at Hockenheim started off with an accident. Luciano Berti hit the back of Michael Schumacher's car in the first corner, causing his car to lift up. And what happened next?
Michael Schumacher hesitated and was hit by Luciano Berti in the Prost, who almost landed on top, almost launching upwards.
Berti flew through the air and crashed hard into the safety barriers, a situation that made everyone fear the worst. However, the driver came out uninjured. Due to the magnitude of the accident and the debris left on the track, the race was temporarily suspended, and although both drivers rejoined for the restart, they ended up retiring on lap 23. Christian Albers was lucky to come out uninjured from a terrifying accident. During the first lap of the race, Yuji Ide miscalculated his braking, which resulted in a brutal crash.
The driver leaves. Oh, it's Albers.
Yes, Albers flipped over the car.
Albers rolled over several times and miraculously came out unscathed. After the crash, ID damaged his car's front but continued after a pit stop. However, his luck didn't last long as he retired later on lap 33 due to a suspension failure. Nick Heidfeld was the victim of a multi-car accident at the 2006 Indianapolis Grand Prix. It all started on the first lap, when Juan Pablo Montoya hit the rear of Kimi Räikkönen's car, which in turn crashed into Heidfeld's car, and the following happened.
And then actually the two McLarens crash into each other. Oh, we have a rollover. Heidfeld has rolled over 3 times.
Montoya lost control and several cars got caught up in the chaos. Heidfeld went airborne, flipping 3 times before landing in the gravel trap. And in a matter of seconds, 7 drivers were out of the race. Despite the brutality of the crash, Heidfeld walked away unscathed in a race that ended with a total of 14 retirements. Andrea de Cesaris had an accident that marked his career. While running in 11th position, he lost control of his car in one of the fastest sections of the circuit.
De Cesaris slides sideways onto the grass and rolls over. Oh, de Cesaris! A serious accident!
The car took off from the grass, rolling over several times before ending up destroyed. Miraculously, De Cesaris came out unscathed. However, this accident ended his team's patience, and they fired him immediately. The start of the race was total chaos. Ralf Schumacher went for an overtake on the Ferraris of Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello with a very risky move. However, the result was not what he expected.
Incredible. Ralf Schumacher goes flying through the air. There's total chaos at the first corner.
He hit the rear of Barrichello's car and the Williams went flying over the Ferrari before landing in the gravel trap. Behind them, chaos broke out. 8 cars were out of the race in a matter of seconds, leaving debris and wreckage all over the track. Despite the brutality of the crash, all the drivers came out unscathed. And, incredibly, the race continued without a red flag. Martin Brundle was involved in one of the most terrifying crashes ever seen in Australia. On the first lap of the race, he got caught in a multi-car crash when David Coulthard crossed his path. Brundle, with no time to react, hit the wheels of the McLaren, and this happened.
Dropping to third and fourth, there's Damon Hill and, wow, a Jordan car.
His car went flying, rolled over several times, and broke in half. Miraculously, the British driver came out unscathed, as the car withstood the impact and prevented the accident from becoming a tragedy. Even so, the race was stopped. Despite the brutality of the crash, Brundle crossed the track, went through a brief safety check, and got into the spare car for the restart. However, his return was brief, because just 2 laps later, he had to retire after a collision with Pedro Paulo Diniz. Despite the severity of the accident, years later, an even more chilling one would occur at that same corner. Mark Webber was involved in one of the most shocking accidents that ever happened at the Valencia circuit. During the race, when he was trying to overtake Heikki Kovalainen's Lotus, Mark Webber went for the move on the inside, and this happened.
Oh no, Mark Webber just went off.
Oh, Mark Webber.
Webber's front left tire hit Kovalainen's left rear tire. So, the Red Bull went flying through the air and flipped over before crashing violently into the barriers. Luckily, the Australian driver was unharmed and got up on his own. And speaking of flipping, if you're enjoying the video, subscribe. In the second free practice in Monza, Marcus Ericsson suffered a brutal accident. The Swedish driver was heading down the main straight when, as he approached the braking point, something unexpected happened.
Something must have broken. The drag reduction system was open. The drag reduction system stayed open even after pressing the brake.
The Sauber veered inexplicably into the wall and flew through the air at over 300 kilometers per hour. The impact was so violent that the car ended up destroyed, and the red flag was immediately deployed. Miraculously, Ericsson emerged unscathed. Martin Brundle was involved in an accident that was lucky not to turn into a tragedy. Eddie Irvine tried to pass Eric Bernard's lapped car, but didn't see Jos Verstappen beside him and pushed him onto the grass.
Bernard was forced off. Verstappen spun 360 degrees.
The Dutch driver's car flew through the air, spun out of control, and hit Brundle's head directly, splitting his helmet in half. Fortunately and incredibly, Brundle walked away unscathed from an accident that left everyone in shock. On lap 18 of the Grand Prix, Fernando Alonso had the most terrifying accident of his career when he tried to overtake Esteban Gutierrez, and this happened.
Here comes Alonso. Oh. Yes. So it wasn't a car failure. That sounds kind of familiar to me.
Alonso hit the back of the Haas while braking at turn 3, sending his McLaren flying at over 300 kilometers per hour. And after rolling over several times, he crashed brutally into the wall, scattering debris all over the track. When they saw the accident, the marshals immediately waved the red flag and Gutierrez quickly approached to check on him. Incredibly, despite being a little dazed, Alonso came out unscathed. However, due to the collision, the Spaniard was unable to participate in the next race in Bahrain. When Joe was involved in one of the most chilling crashes at the start of the race in Silverstone, during the start, Pierre Gasly tried to go between Joe and George Russell, but Russell moved to the left too late and hit the Frenchman's car. The contact sent the Briton into the side of Joe's car, and the following happened.
It was more serious than we thought as the car went past the barrier and hit the wires. Luckily, it didn't reach the crowd.
The Alfa Romeo soared, flipped upside down, and slid along the track. Then it went through the gravel trap at high speed until the car sank into the gravel, was catapulted over the tire barrier, and crashed violently into the safety fence, just a few meters from the people in the stands. Fortunately, the halo remained intact, protecting him from tragedy and allowing him to walk away unharmed. The Paul Ricard circuit was the scene of one of the most terrifying accidents in the history of Formula One. On lap 10, Mauro Baldi tried to overtake Jochen Mass, but contact was inevitable and this happened.
Jochen went off the track and oh my god, he has gone through the barriers.
Maz's car landed upside down, sliding at high speed toward the barrier. The impact was brutal. The car went through the safety fence and headed straight toward the stands, where the spectators were only a few meters away. Debris flew everywhere and the single-seater burst into flames. Luckily, the car stopped just before causing a bigger tragedy. Incredibly, Maz only suffered some burns and walked out on his own. During lap 26, Robert Kubica was involved in one of the most shocking accidents in Formula One. While trying to overtake Jarno Trulli's Toyota, he hit the rear of his car and was sent flying onto the grass at over 230 kilometers per hour. What?
Oh, what an accident. Kubica has had a brutal accident. Let's see.
The car hit a bump, lifted off, and lost control. This caused it to crash head-on into a concrete wall at high speed. The impact was so strong that the car bounced to the opposite wall. The wreckage was scattered all over the track, and you could even see Kubica's feet through the destroyed single-seater. The Polish driver suffered an ankle sprain and a concussion, so he was replaced by Sebastian Vettel for the next race. During qualifying, Rubens Barrichello was involved in an accident that almost turned into a tragedy. When approaching a chicane, he hit a curb uncontrollably, and this happened. The impact caused his car to lift into the air and crash violently into the tire barrier at over 225 kilometers per hour. The impact was so severe that the car bounced and spun several times before coming to a stop. Barrichello sprained his wrist and broke his nose, but avoided more serious injuries. However, due to his injuries and his state of shock, he was forced to miss Sunday's race in one of the most tragic weekends in Formula One history. On the first lap, Romain Grosjean had an accident from which he was lucky to escape with his life. The Frenchman's Haas veered off after contacting the front wing of the AlphaTauri, driven by Anil Kvyat, and at nearly 250 kilometers per hour crashed violently into the curved barrier.
Number 4 is already dragging an impressive incident with fire there. Incredible what happened.
The crash split the car in two, but that wasn't the worst part. The fuel tank broke, causing an explosion and a massive fireball that engulfed the car. Grosjean was trapped in the flames for 28 seconds while the marshals and the medical team rushed to the scene. Complete uncertainty prevailed. Fortunately, Grosjean managed to escape the flames, suffering only second-degree burns on his hands and ankle, and that was his last race in Formula One. Unfortunately, the next position wasn't as lucky. But before that, if you've made it to the last spot, it's because you've enjoyed the video. So, subscribe. Niki Lauda was involved in one of the most chilling accidents in Formula One history. On the second lap of the race, the suspension of his Ferrari broke as he went through a corner and the car lost control.
When he went off the track, he punctured the fuel tank of the Ferrari. Brett Lunger couldn't avoid the burning car.
Lauda crashed brutally into the wall and the car was immediately engulfed in flames, turning it into a death trap. To make matters worse, he was hit by another driver who couldn't avoid him. Some drivers, along with the marshals and spectators, rushed to rescue him. Finally, they managed to get him out of the car after 55 seconds in which he was trapped in the flames. Niki Lauda was hospitalized in critical condition. Doctors found he had severe burns to his head and hands, inhaled toxic gases, and had chest contusions. As a result, they feared for his life and had to induce a coma. Surprisingly, he managed to recover, and just 42 days later, he returned to the track at the Italian Grand Prix in one of the most impressive feats in the history of motorsport. But accidents don't only happen on the track. Pit stops can also be catastrophic, causing serious injuries, explosions, and even deciding world championships. So watch this video and learn about the 20 worst pit stops in history.